House to Home, brought to you by Remax Diamond Realty.
All right, happening everybody. House to Home is coming at you from Hagåtña today, where we are in the home of Liz and Gina from Remax Diamond Realty Guam. Ladies, Hafaday. Thanks for having us in your beautiful office once again.
Good morning.
And we say Hafaday and welcome to a new friend of ours, Tim Roberts, who is going to enlighten us, based on your expert knowledge of the law as an attorney, on wills and how they affect property. But Tim, I'm sure you would agree, maybe more to the point, what is important if you do not have a will and how it affects real estate.
Yeah, this is why you should have a will. Because if you don't have a will, we have a probate code that says what happens to your property when you pass away. And you have to know the difference between community property and separate property. Community property is everything a husband and wife acquired during the marriage. Separate property is everything each spouse had before marriage and what they inherit during the marriage. So if you don't have a will, 100% of your community property goes to your spouse. And 1/3 of your separate property goes to your spouse, and 1/3 of your separate property, or 2/3 of your separate property go to your children. And why that's important is once that happens, the people that get your property, the wife with 100% of the community property, and your kids with 2/3 of the separate property, they can deed it away. They don't have to give it, no matter how many years you and your wife have talked about the kids are going to get the land, now they can deed it away to somebody that you may not have ever anticipated would get the property. So it's a pretty simple thing to have a will, and I think everybody should do it.
Okay, well, I'll let the ladies jump in here in a second because I know they've got a million questions for you, but this topic has always fascinated me as a member of the media, and because the word you used specifically was marriage, right? And legally, if a husband and wife, you know, domestic partnership and everything, if they have codified their relationship in that way, obviously they can split the property, but many people on Guam, you know, like live together, they have children, they stay together for decades and decades, but it's becoming more and more common where people actually do not legally marry. How does that affect a will?
Guam does not recognize common law marriages, unlike a lot of states. So I know people call it my common law, this is my common law. Mm-hmm. They're not. And so that's what I can say. They're not. There's no common law marriage in Guam.
Okay, so if people just like live together and for all intents and purposes, you know, like they are a couple, they pay each other's bills, they have joint bank accounts, but if they are not married, then they can get pretty confusing.
Yeah, part of the confusion, in my opinion, comes from the fact that all the health insurers recognize common law status. And so if you live with somebody, you can just put her on there, or him, and now the health insurance covers them, but Guam law says it does not recognize the same common law marriage.
But here's a catch. We get a lot of questions from people who, let's say someone wrote a will out and they think that that will satisfy transference of property without probate.
I know lots of people think that. No, you have to go to court. When you have a will, it has to be probated. You have to probate the will and you have to go to court.
You know, the other question we get often is, so do I need to go to an attorney to prepare my will, or could I just write down what my intentions are and sign off on that? Would that suffice as a will?
And what is required for it to be valid?
I'm sure you get this question 1,000 times a week, Tim.
I knew I was going to get this question.
1001.
Even though it wasn't on the list of questions. And I'll answer it like this. We highly recommend you get an attorney, but no, under Guam law there are holographic wills. And that is a will that's written by the testator and dated by the testator and signed by the testator. It doesn't require witnesses, unlike a will, and you can do it. And you can deposit it with the court, give it to your lawyer, and put it in your drawer at home. But I have seen this, all lawyers have seen this, there's going to be a fight. Somebody's going to say, that's not my grandfather's signature, or that's not his writing, or he promised me all the property from the kamachili tree down to the broken down school bus, like they did in the old days. And there were no fights, but in this day and age, there's going to be a fight. You ought to have a will. If you get a will, it'll be, you only need 2 subscribing witnesses. Most lawyers have 3. Those 3 witnesses will be around to say, no, I was there, and he signed it. Also, a will doesn't need to be notarized, but as a practical matter, all lawyers will have a will notarized, because now you have the notary that's saying, yeah, he was there and he signed it.
So relative to our ongoing discussion about like real estate and everything, so when a couple gets married and say, you know, as part of their wedding present, say like from their parents and everything like that, they're given land, or you know, they're given a home if they're so lucky. Should formalizing a will be one of the first things they do as part of that? Is, you get married, you get a house, you get a will. It's just one of those things you should do.
Yeah, you should do it, because you can always change a will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you get divorced, you can change your will. If you have more kids than you thought, you can change your will. Yeah, it's a good idea. And they're not expensive. All Guam lawyers have a will form on their computer, and it's a blank form. It says, I, so-and-so, fill in the name, own this property, put your property description in. I own this bank account with this number, and then you say, I give this to that guy, I give this to that guy, I give this to that guy. And the lawyer will call in a couple of 3 secretaries to be the subscribing witnesses, and boom, you have a will. And so lawyers can be expensive, but this is beyond the scope of the question. Get a lawyer, shop around, get the best price. It's your money. If the lawyer gives you an answer you don't like it's going to be $1,000, call around. You'll get a cheaper price.
And that's not necessarily like putting somebody like on retainer for like a long-term thing. I mean, it's a couple meetings maybe, and like a couple transactions, and and it's a worthwhile investment. What'll
happen is, at least in my office, I'll talk to whoever wants a will done. I'll send them my will, email them my will form. I'll say, fill that out, give it back to me. I give it to my secretary, she prepares it, I look over everything, make sure everything's okay, then I call the guy, we have a meeting, he signs, 1 meeting with the lawyer.
Do you hold the will? Do you retain it?
There's 3 places you can put a will. I like to hold the will as a lawyer, but you can also put it in a drawer at home, or you can deposit it with the court, and the court is bound by statute to maintain that will in a separate section. So when you die, the court will then produce the will, or relatives will say, hey, court, you have my will.
That's Guam's kind of like de facto hall of records?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, depends.
Yeah.
For this purpose it is.
Okay.
But I think the myth that we wanted you to address today more particularly is a lot of people have come to us and they've said, so I've already decided who this property will go to, and I've already gone to see an attorney, or I've scribbled it down somewhere in a piece of paper and I had witnesses. And so now I don't have to worry when I pass, my property is going to go to my child or my best friend or my dog. And I think that's the myth that we need to address is it just defines who you want it to go to, but it still has to go through probate. Isn't that correct?
Yes, because it would be a holographic will, and if it meets the very minimal requirements for a holographic will, the court will open probate and it'll pass your property according to what you wrote in your holographic will, your handwritten will.
Okay.
Now, I'm not a trust lawyer, but the way to avoid probate, and this is what I recommend to people, there's 2 ways to avoid probate. One is create a trust, and that's not something I do all the time. My partner John Wasowski was supposed to be here today, couldn't be. He does trusts. The other way is to deed the property to the people you want to get it before you pass away. That avoids probate. If you have, say, 3 children and 3 pieces of property, then it's easy. What if you have an acre and you have 4 kids? You can build a house on a 1/4 acre, but it's not subdivided. You can just have your kids pony up to get a surveyor to divide the property 4 ways and say, you get lot A, you get lot B, you get lot C, and you get lot D, and deed it to them.
And these concepts are very interrelated because, I mean, anytime you Google like last will or something like that phrase in it, you'll always see will, deed, trust, typically like in the context of the same page.
And I wanted to mention this. If you Google Guam compiler of laws, it'll take you directly to a Guam law website that has all Guam laws on it. And you want to be looking for 15 Guam code annotated. So it's got everything there is to know about the probate code. Well, that is the probate code. It's all there, and it's easy to understand. So. Okay.
If I may, Gina was just asking a really poignant question because she was saying, like at the point when you pass, then what happens to your property, legally and everything. We know, based on stats, that till death do us part very often does not last. These days, and 1 out of every 2 marriages tragically ends in divorce and everything. If you should need to amend it,
not so tragically as
yeah, depending on how you look at it. I know that's not your particular area of expertise as a law, but point taken. Real quickly, if you need to amend an existing will and everything like that with property and everything, how easy is it to do that?
Easy.
Okay.
A will is just, I guess, executory. It doesn't kick in until you pass away, so it can be changed any time before you pass away.
So do you write an addendum to the will, or do you have to redo that will?
Can you nullify it and make a new one?
What I do is redo the will. I say, and your new will will say, I revoke all previous wills.
Previous wills. I got it.
All right.
And if you have a piece of property and your suggestion was trust or deed it, right?
Yeah.
I could actually deed my property. Let's say I say, Jason, I really like you. I'm going to give you this piece of property, but I'm going to keep it until I pass.
So that, yeah.
Could I do that? Because that seems to be like with my mother. She wanted to deed the property, but she didn't want to deed the property until she passed, which is impossible. I kept telling her, Mom, it doesn't work that way. But is there some mechanism where they could deed the property, but they still retain ownership until they're gone?
You know, I'm not sure, and I want to explain my answer.
Okay.
Guam's a small place and the lawyers can't specialize. There's no lawyers in Guam that specialize in wills because there's not enough to do. So no lawyers in Guam have memorized the probate code or other parts of the code. I don't know the answer to that. It'd be easy to find out. I don't think you could do it. It'd be called I think you can do it.
Like a deed that says I still own it, but once I pass, it goes to Jason.
I think so, but I'd have to.
Isn't
So that might be the next episode.
I would have to research it.
Yeah, well, let's not hold any.
Life
Well,
estate?
there is
Isn't
one
that a
thing that
life
we are going to
estate?
hold people to because we got to run everybody. But Gina was just saying
Liz,
she's going to give me
that's the
some
next
land.
episode.
Yes.
Yeah, Gina
Next
said she's going to
episode.
give me some land. So since we have a lawyer here, I'm going to go ahead and formalize that. So we'll see you guys like next time in the next episode. Bye bye. Here you go, Gina.